In 1995, the doors to cages were opened and gray wolves entered Yellowstone National Park, a place that had been without wolves since 1926. The 31 Canadian wolves had made a long journey to get to their new home, and the scientists in charge of the project had been through a 20-year struggle to get them there. The question of whether there should be wolves in Yellowstone National Park has been a conflict for years. Lawmakers, ranchers, environmental groups, and scientists have searched for compromise but still struggle today. Throughout human history, wolves have been portrayed as killers and deceivers. They often were the villains of fairy tales and stories told by people all over the world. Humans have a complicated history with wolves. When Americans moved westward, they began killing wolves because they were seen as a threat to pioneers' livestock. As more and more settlers came, the number of elk, bison, and deer began to decline, and the wolves were blamed for that as well. An organized government-ran extermination campaign began. When Yellowstone became America's first national park in 1872, the process to eliminate the native wolves was well underway. Wolf killing was even a part-time job for men known as wolfers, who would use bison carcasses poisoned with strychnine to kill wolves. Bounties offered for dead wolves, as well as high prices for wolf pelts, made wolfing a popular occupation. The wolves in Yellowstone's 2.2 million acres were not protected. In fact, the U.S. Army and later the National Park Service itself were ordered to clear the wolves out of Yellowstone to protect elk and other big game in the park. The last wolf pack was killed in Yellowstone in 1926. In the middle of the 20th century, scientists including Aldo Leopold, one of America's first conservationists, explained that without wolves, growing deer and elk populations would destroy the vegetation because they had no predators. In his essay, Thinking Like a Mountain, Leopold wrote that throwing the ecosystem out of balance can have grave effects, even on the animals left behind. Deer and elk, their populations exploding without wolves to control them, destroyed the plant life. Leopold wrote, "I now suspect that just as a deer herd lives in mortal fear of its wolves, so does a mountain live in mortal fear of its deer, and perhaps with better cause. For while a buck pulled down by wolves can be replaced in 2 or 3 years, a range pulled down by too many deer may fail replacement in as many decades." Leopold and other scientists and environmentalists began to think that hunting the wolves to extinction had been a big mistake. Many began to consider reintroducing wolves to Yellowstone and nearby areas in Montana and Idaho. By the 1970s, scientists were alarmed by the number of species threatened with extinction. In 1973, Congress passed the Endangered Species Act to protect endangered animals and threatened animals from extinction. Once an animal was placed on the list, the government had to come up with a plan for the recovery of that animal. When the gray wolf was placed on the endangered species list in 1974, wolves lived only in small parts of Minnesota and Michigan. The act provided a possibility that wolves could be reintroduced in Yellowstone. When he signed the Endangered Species Act, President Richard Nixon said,
"Each of us all across this great land has a stake in maintaining and improving environmental quality, clean air and clean water, the wise use of our land, the protection of wildlife and natural beauty, parks for all to enjoy. These are part of the birthright of every American."
In the years after the ESA, scientists and wildlife officials formed the Northern Rocky Mountain Wolf Recovery Team and worked slowly to put together a plan for wolf reintroduction.
And so we restored wolves because the Park Service policy changed towards what is a natural system that includes large carnivores like wolves. We also had the Endangered Species Act come about as law in 1973 that says we cannot wipe some species off the face of the planet. And wolves are very much under that umbrella too. So the best answer as to why wolves were restored to Yellowstone is it makes it a natural system. It was the law, but finally people wanted it.
The proposal plan sparked a new conflict over the wolf's value. Oppositions came mostly from farmers, ranchers, and hunters and their elected officials in the areas around Yellowstone. These people were concerned that wolves would kill their livestock without them being able to do anything about it. because of the wolves' endangered status. They were determined to stop wolf reintroduction any way they could.
$60,000 the first couple years. Between the sheep we lost, the calves we lost, every time that those wolves come in here and take a part of my living away, that means I have to make it up somewhere else.
The wolf recovery team was willing to compromise. Their plan named the wolves in Yellowstone as an experimental or non-essential population rather than a fully protected population. This meant that livestock owners could kill wolves on their property if the wolves were attacking livestock. This was horrifying to wolf lovers, but was necessary compromise to get the plan approved. Various organizations in favor of wolf reintroduction also started a fund that would compensate ranchers for lost livestock. The two sides were working together. In August 1987, the Fish and Wildlife Service signed off on the Rocky Mountain Wolf Recovery Plan. Before the plan could happen, the scientists had to create an environmental impact study, or EIS. They finally received congressional support and funding and started working on the EIS in 1992. As part of the study, the wolf recovery team had to hold public meetings and hearings in order to hear concerns from people on both sides. Wolf lovers and wolf haters faced off in these crowded, angry hearings. The Fish and Wildlife Service received over 160,000 written comments from the public. In the end, supporters of the wolf reintroduction plan outnumbered opponents, and the plan was approved in June of 1994, 20 years after the wolves had been placed on the endangered species list. On Thursday, January 12, 1995, the first wolves were released into acclimation pens in Yellowstone. This was called a soft release because the wolves would remain in acclimation pens for a few months and then be released into the park. 31 wolves were released in Yellowstone in 1995 and 1996. At the same time, wolves were being released in central Idaho in a hard release. The wolves had been captured in family groups in Canada and fitted with radio collars so scientists could track them and study them. On March 21, 1995, the wolves were released from their acclimation pens and began their lives in Yellowstone. One of the main benefits of wolf reintroduction to Yellowstone Park itself is something biologists call trophic cascade. The reintroduction of predators to an ecosystem can affect all other parts of the ecosystem. In Yellowstone, the wolves have reduced the number of elk. Areas once overgrazed by elk are now covered with aspen, willow, and cottonwood trees, which stabilize the stream banks and provide a habitat for various bird species. Beaver colonies have also increased because of the increase in willow trees, which beavers like to eat. Beaver dams have also increased ponds that provide habitat for fish, amphibians, birds, and insects. Wolves eat coyotes, so fewer coyotes mean more small mammals and food for eagles and hawks. Wolves often leave remains of their kills behind for scavengers like eagles, ravens, bears, red foxes. The wolves have helped restore the natural ecosystem that existed in Yellowstone and made the park more wild and natural. It is also estimated that wolf watching brings $35 million a year to the area around Yellowstone. While many people have celebrated the success of the wolf reintroduction, this success has sparked a new round of conflict. As wolf populations have grown, ranchers have reported more livestock deaths due to wolves. The decline of elk populations has alarmed hunters and hunting outfitters in the area. In 2009, wolves were removed from the endangered species list, and the management of their numbers was turned over to the states. Since then, Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho have allowed and encouraged wolf hunting. Conservation groups fear that wolves will be hunted to extinction again and are lining up to support their protection. Many ranchers and farmers believe that extinction can't come soon enough. One thing seems certain: the wolves of Yellowstone and the surrounding areas will only survive this conflict if both sides, the wolf lovers and the wolf haters, are willing to listen to each other and to compromise.